Just sitting there slightly panicked. Default state. Yeah.
Default state of panic. That's going to be the title for the video. Just get into a default state of panic.
Slightly sweaty.
Now, Cian, we've got just such a huge breadth of things we could talk about.
Sure.
We've spoken many times about all the various things you do, so we're going to try and narrow that down a little bit today. And I suppose the first place to start is, what do you do? How would you define yourself? Or can you even do that?
Yeah, I suppose I could just call myself a designer, because people like to amend titles to the front of that term. So whether it be graphic designer, web designer, product designer, UI, UX designer, they can all apply, and they vary from project to project. So I'll just distill that down to designer at the moment, and whatever the project requires, I'll put that title in front of me.
Fair enough. So insert project, designer. That seems
Exactly.
like a good
Yeah,
plan.
whatever you need.
Which I think then makes sense to talk about maybe some projects. Like, what are you doing at the moment, or what are some of like the big projects that you've done that would really define who you are?
So I suppose I would have been someone that started off in the world of graphic design. So my path is generally taken from doing print design into the digital world, into creating digital artifacts. So a lot of the work I would have been known for in the past was doing a lot of iconography design, summing up a brand, an application or whatever into an icon that represented the product itself. So I did a lot of work for that over the years, and then I ended up in the world of just general UI, UX design. At the moment, I'm actually doing a lot of local projects. So I'm based in Kinsale, Ireland, and what's actually interesting me at the moment is a lot of projects around the locality, a lot of projects around visualizing things in the past, things that could be in the place that we live. So some of the work that I'm doing at the moment is towards that end, to serve the local community itself.
Okay, so before we get too carried away down the route of the actual projects, which we definitely want to dive into because there's some insane stuff there.
Sure.
What I want to talk about is maybe how you got to this point. So what have you undertaken that has led you to the point where you're doing these projects now?
So it's generally been a mindset of, I'll try that and learn as I go, because I don't know what I don't know unless I start doing it. So my first role as a graphic designer required me to learn Quark Express. I didn't know Quark Express, but I knew the Dummy's Guide to Quark Express was in my bag, and I wrote out every single action, a post-it note, which I then put underneath my desk on the first day of work.
Okay.
So I winged my way into graphic design because it's by doing, and then every other project from there has had that approach of, I'll know when I start doing whether this is something that I'll appreciate continuing, whether this is something beyond my wheelhouse, or whether something that might emerge from learning that actually benefits other projects. So everything is being layered by, let's learn, and then through learning do we have insights into other projects that naturally, organically emerge.
But it's not just learning, is it? Like, so you're literally taking on a project with this idea of, if I take this project, I need to be able to know this, and learning on the job. Really, you're not going away and doing a course. You're physically going, I need this skill, so I'm going to learn it while I do the project.
Yeah, and I suppose the idea of constraints bring creativity. So every time that you're given a blank page, most people freeze unless you're, a certain author. So most of the time I'm told I can only do it within this time period. I can only really use this approach. You need to have this output from me. That helps clarify what you're trying to deliver. It helps discard the approaches that maybe might be fun but would take twice the amount of time. So most of the time, that mild panic sitting there at the back of your mind is a real just focusing effort when it comes to, I have to learn this because someone requires me to give them quality output. It doesn't mean that you're trying to pull the wool over their eyes, but you're simply trying to take your existing toolbox and expand it and potentially give them something that they didn't have before.
So this is something that I kind of resonate with myself, this mild panic approach of I need to get this done, and there is a timeline in which I have to get this done. I find without that, I kind of meander, shall we say, towards a finish line.
Yeah.
You in a similar boat?
Yeah, because I do think that we need, like, I love the sound of deadlines as they fly by my head used to be an approach, but at a certain point, you do need to focus efforts. I think one thing in the digital world with our updates and betas and alphas is that you don't have that single point of focus, single point of pressure that allows someone to go, we're done, we made some mistakes, but we have to learn again next week. Sometimes I think the print and off-world design, if I can call it that, or offline world, you had to show up, you had to produce, and then from that you learned and you reattempted it. Whereas sometimes the digital world is a little bit more diffuse with the deadlines, and I'm not sure that's entirely beneficial all the time to actually creating a product and making those trade-offs, which are essential with any project.
So it's interesting because like whenever I make these, I speak to great creatives like yourself. I'm always thinking of who might be watching and what information we might be able to give them that's helpful. And I feel like this is something that I would always tell somebody to avoid. This my approach of panic and get it done because that's what motivates me. So just the way you phrase that, do you actually think that it's a beneficial tactic almost to put that amount of pressure on yourself?
I think discomfort is usually, on the edge of discomfort is where most of the learning comes. I know it's been said many times, outside your comfort zone, but if I know how to approach something, am I just repeating some of the work that I've done before versus I'm now being tasked to do this? Most of the time when people are doing hackathons, it's not actually the output so much as the focusing effort of, I have 48 hours, we have X amount of resources, we need to really, really focus in on what's beneficial and how that might actually be a net benefit to someone. Like, people see it as a negative to have pressure, but pressure brings focus, pressure enough or using enough time generally brings a diamond to my eyes.
Yeah, and then I think realistically the way I'd bring that round, something that I've definitely learnt myself is constraints. Like you said earlier, if you can apply the constraints, then you will learn something because that is definitely forced to do so, maybe with less pressure.
Yeah, because when I started doing iconography was 128 pixels by 128 pixels. You need to sum up what the program does. Let's say inside this box, you can only use a certain amount of detail because it would shrink and grow as someone moved it around on screen. How could I use those constraints to actually be inventive, imaginative, fun, and actually bring someone's brand through that as well? So it was hugely beneficial. Whereas if I'd been giving pages and pages, if I'd created a brochure to explain what the program did, would it be any more useful or informative as opposed to just giving them a simple representation or symbol of what the program does? I don't know.
Okay, so we've established you have a certain skill set, which is very broad, and a methodology of a little bit of pressure and some constraints while learning something. That leads us to your projects. What are you working on at the moment? You've mentioned, obviously, kind of taking things locally, looking at them in the past. So what have you been doing recently that kind of excites you or you're really looking forward to getting out there?
So let's say one of the projects I've been doing in the past, and a lot of times it's triggered from a realization. So one project I'm doing is around reforestation. So I was reading one of the books telling me that Ireland used to be a temperate rainforest. So we put Ireland, Britain, our rainforest nations. They just happen to be now blanketed in lovely green fields, but that is not the default state. But to tell someone that, they would be skeptical, and they'll go, well, this is always the way it's been. And to actually convince them that this used to be rainforest would be remarkably difficult. And I think for me, it's like, that's a challenge. That little nugget is like, is there a way I could then start to visualize that to people to start a conversation. Maybe it's around reforestation, maybe it's around conservation, maybe it's for environmental reasons. So that started me down a road of, can I show certain parts of Ireland as they used to be in their rainforested state? So from that, what tool set do I need to learn? What is the actual method by which I do this? How could I display it? So at this point, I'm now creating certain or recreating certain parts of the country in a forested state, but areas that are very familiar to people, not just little nooks that they've never visited, but maybe tourist spots and certain locales that, while being beautiful, how would it change if we realized that that was in an altered state from its default, which would be in rainforest. So at the moment, I'm creating Forests of Ireland. The idea is to show these familiar locations, and then at some point to eventually allow people to, at those locales, whether that be poster, VR, etc., to actually see, oh, this is the way the default state of this landscape would be, and how much that might help conversations that get shut down because the status quo is a very strong visual, because most people find it hard to, dream up what it could have been like and then to convince other people. So my project is part of that.
You say you use the term dream up there, which I think is appropriate. So this particular project, this is something that you've decided to do. This isn't a commission. This isn't, somebody hasn't come along and gone, oh, can you create this for us? So outside of dreaming it up and having this idea, what drives you to do this? Like it's obviously, I know it's part of your work, but why take on the project?
When you realize that one person can have a lot more agency than they realize, the permission needed to do this is me looking in the mirror going, do you want to do it? It's like, okay, we're doing it. So for the most part, if you have a conviction about something, you have a tool set or a willingness to learn, to expand that tool set, then I think you should have a personal challenge to go and learn it. I'm not going to do it perfectly. I'm going to encounter some unusual blowback, I'm sure, from certain quarters, but that's still not a reason to try and increase the agency you have by doing these projects. And maybe for me, it is, how much impact could you have? How much discussion could you create through these projects that maybe wasn't there before? I don't need to ask permission to do any of these projects, so I won't.
So yeah, I don't need to, so I won't. And is this something you'd like? I love the idea, and I'm not a designer, I have nowhere near your ability in that realm, but I'm a photographer, so I will go out and take photos, I will go out and create videos. But I think the difference being that I very rarely put them out there. It's practice, but I'm not putting them out there. You're creating whole projects to put out to people just because you think it's a good idea.
Yeah, but for the most part, our barrier to entry is a .com or a .ie or whatever the case may be, an evening spent working on some form of representation of that, and now I can communicate that idea out to anyone. So why would I hold this on my hard drive and then invite people into my room to show it, when the ability to spread that out to someone in Eastern Greenland who might have the same idea is just maybe 2 cups of coffee away in an evening, in front of the computer. So
Would you, so from your point of view, obviously Portfoliobox, we do portfolios. Would you consider, rather than having maybe a single page portfolio, for you, the bigger way to show your work is you will create individual maybe websites or individual full projects that you can then put out to people?
completely, because the you're trying to create a story. It's not just, oh, there's a tree. It's like, well, this was the original state. This is the circumstances and reasons why it's come to be this way. This is one of the areas that we could look at. This is a visual of what could be the end state. All of that needs more than maybe a single picture on our portfolio could be. So if you're creating a story, maybe the container for that is an individual site. So most of the time I'm spinning up a site, but that's, again, if I get to the point of that's too comfortable, maybe I need to spin up a different way of telling that story. So for the moment, websites are easy. Maybe I need to push the boat out a little bit and start thinking about different media to put that story out.
And it takes you right back around to what you're talking about at the beginning about your whole process of make myself uncomfortable, learn a new thing, and continually add it on.
Yeah, just sitting there slightly panicked. Default state. Yeah.
Default state of panic. That's going to be the title for the video. Just get into a default state of panic.
Slightly sweaty.
So we've discussed there about you putting these projects out as individual full websites and getting them out to people. At what point do you deem a project ready? Because you're somebody who is learning all the time. So do you put things out and think, oh, that's not right? Or is that just part of the process?
I generally put them out early. So it used to be we'd have our little spinning GIFs of under construction, but now it's mentally spinning in my head as I publish them, because I generally think if I pressure from myself, it's also useful to have pressure from the public. So I generally try and upload these. They're available. They aren't finished, but they're at a point at which the idea is there in its coherent form. So someone that sees that and starts to get curious about, oh, maybe your approach could be improved by this, or have you thought about this? That's the only point I think it's ready to be seen. It's not finished, but it is enough spur for me sometimes to then get the public involved to go, okay, I've promised you that you get something within 6 months. That's another pressure on me as well. So I always think to upload early. You know, they talk about documenting your journey. So I think documenting from idea to coherent, tangible product should be as short as possible. In my mind, I bought the domain. Something should go up there pretty soon after I bought the domain.
So like you've got to have a level of confidence to be able to do that, though, to like almost solicit feedback on something that you know isn't ready. Is that something that have you always had that, or have you kind of learned that over time?
I think you learn when generally if you're getting design feedback and someone hates it, it's like you have to start separating yourself from the work. So at a certain point, if an accountant gets criticized for their spreadsheet, is it the spreadsheet or is it the accountant? It's probably a bit of both, but you can't take that personally. So put it out there in its ugly, unformed state, and then we can go on a journey together to make it exist and make it good is my mantra. So I'm there to make it good, but it has to exist. And that is the drive in all these projects. Otherwise, it sits there as an idea and maybe floats away and someone else comes to the same conclusion. So you have to give them form, these ideas, as soon as possible.
I think that's a very good mantra, one that I've fallen into accidentally over the years from pressure and being uncomfortable. I feel like you're making me realize things about me here, but like being uncomfortable and being in that position of like, okay, I have to get this out. There is no other option. And putting out something that maybe isn't as perfect as I want it to be, but I'm horrible for just sitting around and being like, oh, it needs to be better, it needs to be better, it needs to be better. And you're there going, just put it out.
But no, the voice is still there in my head going, it needs to be better, but it's out there needing to be better. That's the only slight change. I still have that urge to constantly tweak, but the more I see now, the crystal palace of perfection that's in your head is partially a procrastination technique. So I recently read a piece about the 4 stages of a project, which resonated with me. The first stage was uninformed optimism,
Okay.
which most projects live in because I don't know how long this will take. It feels good because I'm already imagining the plaudits that I will get at the end of this. The second stage is informed pessimism, when I realized how much work this is going to take and all my plaudits are falling away as I realized this was going to consume most of my time. The third stage is the valley of despair, where there's no ability to know if I'm doing the correct thing or not. I just have to keep going. And the fourth stage being informed optimism, because I understand what it will take for me to do this project, how much it took out of me, but then I feel I can approach another project with a little bit more awareness of just what it will take. So I generally try and rate my projects on how many are in the valley of despair, how many are uninformed optimism. They all start at the first stage.
Absolutely.
And sometimes knowing you're in the valley of despair is enough to keep going out of the valley of despair.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like a lot of projects for people maybe just live in uninformed optimism. That's where they live and they don't get any further.
Because it doesn't hurt. There's no consequences. There's no feedback. There's no difficulty in that sphere. It feels warm and inviting.
Yeah.
But
You've done a great job because it's in your head, and
Yeah.
and I've got all these awards, and I'm an Oscar-winning filmmaker, right? And if I don't make it, nothing changes.
Exactly. The imaginary high fives just feel so much better than someone going, yeah, that was fine. But you have to push through.
Indeed, and I love that. So what I want to do now is take somewhat of a sharp turn into talking about an element of your work that I find really interesting, because it's maybe not something, or it's maybe something that I haven't fully embraced, and I've seen some of what you've done, and I find it incredible that you've created this, to be honest, and that is AI. You yourself call yourself an AI adopter. Now, I'm interested in two things. Firstly, let's start with how have you used AI, but I also want to talk about your maybe concerns or your kind of moral objections, if there are any, to the use of AI, because I think there's two very different elements there that I think we should talk about. So let's start with the actual AI itself. How are you using it? How are you finding it? And what led you to adopt it?
Sure. So as it started to merge, like anything I've done before, I had to wrap it in a project because otherwise I couldn't get my head around what are the parameters that I should use. So I gave myself a weekend project, a song that's been sitting in my head for years. I always had a visual, a music video, but I was like, well, the time effort involved would be considerable. So I gave myself the time box constraint of over the weekend, make a music video for this 20+ year old song. It was around the idea of dinosaurs going extinct to this song. I used AI to listen to the song, give me suggestions on the scenes that would be appropriate for stages of the song, which was a surprise to me. Okay, there's an ability that I never knew about. Then I asked it based on those to give me some scene suggestions, like any editor would. When I considered this at the end, it's like, okay, well, am I making this music video? And then when I look at someone directing the music video, they're still taking inputs from cameramen, from sound and lighting. So I considered, okay, I'm taking the input this time from the AI. I then took the descriptions of scenes that I liked. I fed them into an image generation tool. From there, I fed that image that I liked into the aesthetic I liked, because I'm trying to maintain consistency. I created small clips from that. And over the course of a weekend, I ended up with about 150, 200 clips. And then I did what anyone editing a music video would do, which is I assembled them to find the rhythm, the pace, whatever. So that project to me showed me capabilities, showed me possible workflows, showed me the gaps in where it is and where I'd like it to be. But that was enough for me to put it out on YouTube going, okay, here's what I created. So it had to be public for me to consider it finished.
Again, some level of uncomfortable in making it over a weekend at the time constraint, and then making it public, which I think again ties into exactly what we were talking about. So what tools did you use in order to generate that just information for anybody watching?
So I used at the start, because it was probably about 8 months ago, which is AI lifetime ago, it was ChatGPT to listen to the song, and then it was Midjourney to create the particular aesthetics I wanted, and then it was Kling to create the small video clips from the Midjourney images, and then just the normal video editing tools like Final Cut to put it together.
Nice. So that's like, I've seen this video and it's incredible. It's absolutely phenomenal work, especially considering you're saying this is like the first foray into maybe AI in that style for you. So is it something you see yourself doing again, like maybe more projects along that style?
Definitely, because I was, one thing I should mention is that I did mix in some stock video from a Envato site that I use. that project taught me a lot around what works for me in AI, what's the capabilities, what's the parameters, what's the gaps, and then that it doesn't need to be pure AI. So for that project, I was also mixing in some stock video as well, because this idea that AI needs to be pure AI, which probably leads to some of the difficulties people are having because there is gaps at the moment, versus if this is another tool in your toolbox, can it be supported with the more traditional means, the stock imagery, some of the work that you've created yourself? And from that, more projects start to merge. Okay, this is another tool. How can this support some of the work I'm doing in the video field, in the print field, and in the website creation field as well?
Yeah, so you're like, it's for you, it is literally another tool that you're stacking on top of all the other ones that you've learned to be able to generate more projects, which is interesting. Now, this leads us to obviously our next element, which is there's obviously questions over AI use, particularly generative AI. How do you view it? Obviously, you're an adopter of it, you use it, but do you put constraints around it, or are you just happy to go ahead and use AI to its fullest, I suppose?
I suppose I always, that mantra of make it exist and then make it good. So what I try and do is I try and put parameters around it so I can use this with some degree of integrity, at least for myself. The positives of AI are that we have collapsed the ability for you to think of an idea and then generate that idea instantly, and then for you to discard that idea as not being worthwhile. And I think that editorial sense of we can edit content far quicker than we can create it means that sometimes you can go off in directions suggested by AI, inspired by AI, or then you can discard certain areas suggested by or driven by AI that will help you clarify your vision. So in a way, again, it's a focusing agent for me, similar to a hackathon or a mild panic.
Well, it always comes back to mild panic.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see that as a, like you say, it's a tool and it's within constraints. And I think, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're doing is you're trying to move your own use of AI away from anything that would be what we call AI slop. You're generating AI with a purpose, and then at the end of it, you have editorial control. And does that seem correct, like important to you to have that?
Yeah, so I use an example of, is there a capability of using AI to generate a website? There is, but I decided I sketched a website for Coast of Ireland, was a kayaking photography site I had. I sketched the homepage and a subpage, and I said, can AI generate this framework for me? I'd normally sketch a website before I create it, so could AI generate the scaffolding for me? It did, using placeholders. I was able to then go in, place my pictures in, and then start to style it as I normally would. So the AI advantage that I see, that it's collapsed the difficulty of getting an idea to exist. One example I had was where I created this website to showcase some kayak photography. I took two sketches that I had, I ran them into an AI to generate HTML code. That HTML code then presented me with the scaffolding for a site that I was able to style and input my own content. That to me is as beneficial as trying to buy a template or code it myself, because I now have the vision in my head. I sketch it as I do with all projects. It exists, but I put my editorial taste on that. I tweak it as needed. But since the sketch was fairly close to my original vision, the AI respected that. So I'm actually getting closer to what was in my head because of maybe AI's ability to respect your wishes.
Yeah, you're even closer than you would be had you gone and, like, say, used a template or something similar along those lines, or this AI generators, but you've physically got a sketch. So we've discussed a whole variety of incredible projects and ideas that you've had, but of course there comes a point where those ideas and these projects, they have to pay the bills. So how do you put a value on your work, and how do you pay the bills with all these ideas?
So I would say for the most part, the struggle has always been is this work going to be how I generate my revenue, or is this work going to be how I generate my imagination or supercharge my imagination? And for a period of time, it's been how I supercharge my imagination, because the work, let's say, that I've been doing has been more conventional work. So I don't think that approach of having something that pays the bills while being able to experiment with ideas outside of your day-to-day work is a bad thing. Sometimes those two marry, where you get a driven company or organization that is really looking to push the boundaries. But I also think as well, there's nothing wrong with doing good, solid work that's asked of you of a brief, and then when your spare time that you're doing work that kind of scratches that itch or pushes your boundaries. So for the most part, I'm okay to do work for various organizations that will help them with my expertise, but also for my personal wants and needs, that I push the boundary outside of that.
And I think that covers off everything we wanted to talk about today, which is a huge breadth of things. So I thank you for your time and your insight. And if you would like to quickly inform the people where they can find you, websites, social media, or would you just, I can just put them all up on screen, Forests of Ireland and such.
You can
like.
put them all on screen, because there will be a scrolling list of websites. There's one website, afterglow.ie, but the rest probably need to listen on title card.
There will be a Star Wars-esque rolling title of websites. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, James.